Blog Talk Radio.
This is Progressive Conservatism, Therapy for the Partisan Soul, and I am Mark Radulich, your very own political shrink for the next hour. Before we jump into the good stuff, let me give you our contact info. If you want to call into the show, it's 646-915-8862. If you want to contact me on Instant Messenger to let me know that you're calling in, or just to respond to whatever it is we're talking about, you can contact me at AOL Instant Messenger, Markkind 1976. That's MARKKIND 1976. You can also reach me on the web at markradulich.com or progressiveconservatism.blogspot.com. Once again, the number to call in, 646-915-8862. All right. Before we get into all the stuff I've got today, and this time I formatted the show a bit differently, going on what I've seen other radio shows do and just sort of the blog format, I set up a couple of piles of stuff. I've got my Iran pile, I've got my Fairly Odd, Miscellaneous Debris pile, I've got something on Milton Friedman, and some of the usual domestic politics stuff. So I'm good to go on content this time. I got it all laid out in front of me. You'll notice the difference between this week and last week was I'm not panting or out of breath. I actually started recording on time, slowly but surely getting to understand the whole blog talk radio technical format. So that's good. Last Sunday, I'll tell you a bit of a story before we jump into this. Last Sunday, my wife and I and our new exchange student from Haiti, yes, we have an exchange student living here. It's great. Our exchange student from Haiti, we took her to church. I believe it was a Catholic church. And the name of it, I believe, is Nativity. My wife and I are very used to your usual conservative Catholic churches. You know, the priest or whomever stands up at the pulpit and does his spiel, and you do a lot of praying, and you do a lot of reading from the Bible and singing here and there. Nothing too fancy, right? Right. Okay. So that's what we thought we were going to get. Now, we had attended the teen mass, which I figured there'd be a lot of kids in the places of adults doing things, but I didn't think it would be that different from regular church. I had asked my wife beforehand, can I wear shorts? This is Florida, and from what I understand, you can wear shorts just about anywhere. And she said, yeah, it's fine. This will be the teen mass. It'll be no big deal. And I said, okay, fine. So we all go. She's somewhat dressed up. The exchange student's very dressed up, and I'm in, shorts and a golf shirt. And we get there, and there's just kids everywhere and parents, blue jeans, T-shirts. I mean, kids, not just in the pews. There were kids, there were like altar children, boys and girls, some of which were in robes and whatnot, but for the most part, they were all just in jeans and in a shirt. They didn't look any different than they would if they were at a high school classroom. And I'm sitting there and I'm wondering, like, you're free to dress however you want within reason, but in all honesty, what happened to church? Why is it that even now church, and I'm going somewhere with this, because this isn't just about dress, because if it was just about dress, I probably wouldn't have even brought this up other than kind of raised an eyebrow. Well, I was reading this book a while back called The Marketing of Evil, and one of the chapters actually deals with churches that have gone so far to cater to the people that attend those churches that they've lost sight of what Christianity is all about. One of the things they cited was, again, these teen masses or these teen programs, and they do things like a gross-out game. I remember something along these lines back when I was a teenager in Massapequa. I got brought to a few of these things, and I remember them distinctly. Of course, at the time, I didn't really think anything of it other than, well, this is stupid. I'd rather go be with other people. But I remember the book was talking about, and I agree with this, that in order to keep people interested in the church, interested in coming to Mass, they were lowering the bar on decorum. They were lowering the bar on the expected behavior of the people that attend church. I'm like, well, this kind of goes against what the main tenet of Christianity is, and that's self-restraint, self-control, self-sacrifice. Not giving in to every single impulse you have, to hold yourself to a higher standard. And these people couldn't get this right going to church. Now, there were other things about it, like, they sang, oh, God, my wife knows this better than I do. They sang the Lord's Prayer, which she almost then left a robin-sized hole in the wall because it was something so bizarre to her. I didn't know what the Lord's Prayer really was until she kind of pointed it out to me, and I'm like, oh, that's what that is? Yes, that's what that is, and they're singing it. So we had this sort of lame Christian rock concert church thing going, which was fine for my mother because, my mother could go to a satanic ritual, and as long as people are singing and dancing, she won't know what's going on. And the Haitian foreign exchange student only gets about 5% of what you're saying in English. So, she was good to go with the music, and as long as it seemed somewhat religious, she was happy. Robin and I, for different reasons, were like, what the heck? We're going to go back again to church tonight. I don't think Robin's going to go. She feels that if she's going to go to church, she wants to go to a real church where you're made to feel bad about what you've done, which is the way it's supposed to go. That being said, and again, if you're listening and you have an opinion on this, I'll be glad to hear. This is not one of those things where, like the Iraq War, I'm going to pound you over the head using, logic and, strict reason. I'm open to suggestion here. If you're saying, hey, look, marketability trumps religiosity, okay, fine. But I don't see it that way. At this time, the giggling you hear in the background belongs to my co-host and one of my good friends, the Reverend John. How's it going, John?
Now, see, you threw me a curveball here.
Oh, I did I?
Yes, because I was expecting to hear you just complaining about how people were dressed.
Mm-hmm.
And that could have gone one way. Unfortunately, you had to go and tie it into something that makes sense.
Tell the listeners what you mean by that, John.
Okay, well, see, I guess what they need to know ahead of time is that, you and I usually discuss some of these things over the course of the week, and those conversations generally turn in...
Well, what some people would call them just regular phone calls, I refer to them as dress rehearsals.
Yes, exactly. And when you had first brought up about getting upset about or not understanding how people weren't dressed up for church, I had brought up about two older gentlemen I know who they go every day, but all they seem to get out of it is complaining about how people are dressed. Which, there's that whole talking about Jesus thing that seems to be missed out on. Especially the same Jesus who used to, clothe the lepers and, clothe the sick and, feed the poor and do these other nice things. It's almost as if saying where, well, unless you come to church, Jesus saying, unless you come to worship me in a shirt and a tie, I don't want you. Go be like a Muslim or something. But, when you tie into the bigger fact that as marketing goes, where now you're even lowering church to the lowest common denominator, that's a different story.
Okay, so you're in agreement then that the average Christian church, and in this case, this teen mass Catholic church has, and I hate to use this phrase because I think we've all agreed that the phrase itself has done what I'm about to say, but would you go in and say that these churches that have lowered the expectations to the lowest common denominator have, in fact, jumped the shark?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
But I do think that there's got to be a point where you have to draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a problem with, especially since, as soon as you say the word God, anyone under the age of 30 just, runs in terror.
That throws me out of the barbecue.
Exactly, I'll throw you out of the barbecue. I don't think there's a problem with trying to update the delivery of the message while keeping the actual message.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think you can relate the lessons that Jesus taught, 2,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
More than that now, I think. to what's going on today. And in some cases they do. There was a message there. You know, in between all the praying and the singing and the announcements and the other stuff that I wasn't quite understanding, there was a message that had somewhat to do with modern life. And I think that's what church is good for. It's when you're faced with a moral question, you know, what do I do about this thing I have before me? Do I go with my first impulse, or do I go with this other thing, you know, and take on maybe all of these consequences if I do it this way? I think church is a good place to go for some advice, you know, for some perspective.
Yes.
What gets me is that I don't know how much they're doing perspective and how much they're doing, let's just throw crap out there. So let's just throw crap out there so that people will come to church. You know, when you're using the same branding and marketing techniques that, you know, Coke and Pepsi use, that to me is a problem.
Yeah.
So anyway, how was your UFC last night? Now, just so everyone knows, before the show began last night, John and I had traded phone calls back and forth again, more dress rehearsals and last-minute changes to the show. And I had gone to go see Fast Food Nation, based on the book by Eric Schlosser, Fast Food Nation, which, unlike the book, was terrible. And I had said to him earlier that day that at my program I had showed the kids a sort of a treat or a different way of doing therapy. I showed him the documentary Who Killed the Electric Car, which makes me sound like this far-left, you know, snooty, hoity-toity movie guy, which I'm really not. You know, I don't necessarily like, you know, the Vin Diesel blowing lots of stuff up XXX sort of thing all the time. But, you know, on the occasion I like something somewhat educational. So I'd seen these two movies, and I was talking to John about it, and I believe John's reaction to, hey, John, you should go rent Who Killed the Electric Car was?
Meh.
Exactly. And, John, what did you do last night rather than go see Fast Food Nation?
I started off the evening going bowling to raise money for the Fraternal Order of Police for their scholarship fund. And so that was for a couple hours. And then I relaxed with the latest Ultimate Fighting Championship pay-per-view.
You want to run that down for us? How'd it go?
It went really well, for the most part. The first three fights were the kind of fights that you were making fun of me for, where they were over in a minute. But that's just because, it was a brutal minute. The heavyweight title fight between Tim Silver and Jeff Munson went the full 5 rounds, but it was slow to the point where I started dozing off because it was like 11:30 at this point.
What do you mean?
When I came through, I thought I was watching the instant replay.
And it was still going on?
Yeah. However, the main event between Matt Hughes, who's been undefeated for 3 years, going up against Georges St. Pierre was really good, where Georges handed him another defeat, capturing the welterweight title. And it was actually funny because he almost won it in the first round. He hit him with like 2 knockout punches, but Hughes was literally saved by the bell. Because when St. Pierre went to go jump on him for a little bit of ground and pound, the bell rang, so he had to start the second round. But then it was like a couple kicks and a knees, and it was just all over. But though it's funny though, because the fight from Saturday night segued nicely into the fights this morning, where it's the Sunday show has officially kicked off the John McCain versus Rudy Giuliani feud.
Okay, John. I guess that'll lead us into our next segment. What are you talking about? Let's for the people who are listening and waiting for us to actually talk about something about politics, let's get to it.
Okay. Well, the big joke, at least for me, and it may not be a very funny joke, was exactly how long it was going to wait after the election for people to start running for president. And it lasted exactly 2 days. It started... Well, first it started with the rumors that John McCain was going to launch his exploratory committee, which is it's basically it's bureaucracy you have to fill out before you get run for president, without getting into the boring details. However, Rudy Giuliani, former mayor of New York City, did his first, and then McCain did his. So now we have 2 people officially running for president on the GOP side.
One of which I don't think has a snowball's chance in hell of getting through the primaries. I mean, I think Giuliani has a good chance of winning a national election on notoriety, being a moderate. I mean, I think you can. The thing about presidential elections is if you're a moderate and you have some degree of common sense and you get on the issues that really matter to the voting public, you can win an election. And it really doesn't matter which party you're from, in most cases, your race or your religion. I think if you can appeal to what it is the people want at the time and you're sincere about it, you can win a national election. The primaries are all about polarization, partisanship, racism. I mean, it's funny the flip for me.
Well, that's the interesting thing about this one, because prior to the November elections, when it looked like George Allen was going to be the Southern candidate du jour, and John McCain was the outsider who, even though he's been a conservative all his life, just didn't hate Democrats and gay people enough to satisfy the South. Now all of a sudden that George Allen is just pretty much wiped off the mat, all of a sudden McCain is a new heir to the throne, even though he's essentially the same person that he was prior to that, but the difference is to where he's just, pro-life and against gay marriage without hating people who disagree with him. Now it's him in comparison to Rudy Giuliani, who is pro-choice and pro-gay marriage. However, I agree with your basic logic about Giuliani not having a snowball's chance in hell. However, there's something, for some reason, he's like huge in the South.
Is he?
Yeah, he's like the biggest fundraiser. He's the most sought after speaker. So I'm wondering
if that has to do with his record on crime. It'd be interesting for the next show to get some information on this and see just what's the attraction that the South has to Giuliani. Where I was going with this was just so everyone understands. You know what? You pretty much have to win the Iowa primary, the New Hampshire primary, and South Carolina. Once you've got those three, the rest fall into line. It's been several decades since it really mattered post South Carolina.
Yeah.
Once you've won those three, people do exactly what they did with Kerry in the previous 2004 election, the presidential election, which was they could kind of see who was already winning. Let's get behind this guy so that we can finish the job and give a strong push. It's always, and I think this was Kerry's downfall. Who looks like they're going to win a national election is who ends up winning the primaries. It's usually split between who people feel are electable and who really, because the primaries are so partisan and are so focused on minutia and the most volatile parts of politics.
Mm-hmm.
The crap
that doesn't matter.
Yeah, the crap that doesn't matter. You have people who will do that exactly. They'll either vote for the most electable candidate or they'll vote for the guy that'll carry their banner. Mm-hmm. And then that guy, and if that guy ends up winning, he ends up dropping the banner just as soon as he becomes a national candidate. The more electable guy, which is the guy that usually wins, or woman,
mm-hmm.
is the one that has no banner.
Yeah.
He's just the most electable.
Exactly.
Which is my fear with McCain,
mm-hmm.
is I think he's going to be the Republican version of Kerry, where where of all the people running, he'll be the most electable. He'll be the one where people will sort of second-guess themselves and say, well, out of everyone running, I think I wouldn't vote for him personally, but I think he can win a national election, so I'll vote for him anyway because I don't want Hillary, Gore at all to win.
Yeah.
Which I think is dumb on behalf of Americans. And if anyone within the sound of my voice can hear this and understand what it is I'm saying, stop voting for the electable candidate. Just vote for the one you think will win. Because if more people had done that in 2004, Dean would have been running against Bush, and then we would have actually had a race instead of Dumb and Dumber, Bad to Worse, Bush and not Bush.
Yeah, the thing with McCain is that I think not only are conservatives just accepting the fact he's going to be the nominee, so are liberals.
Mm-hmm.
Because it got to the point where originally there was like a McCain love fest until they realized that he was probably going to get the nomination and could beat anyone they have. Then all of a sudden they realize, wait a second, he's conservative. And what's stupid is that it's like the idiotic issues that'll get nitpicked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anytime he doesn't disagree with the president, it's now because he's kissing up the conservatives. So forget the fact that he leans towards the left when it comes to immigration, and forget the fact that he's in favor of increasing federal funding for stem cell research. Because he spoke at Jerry Falwell's college, he's kissing up the conservatives.
You know what that tells me, John?
People are stupid?
Almost. And that is true. But journalists are an extra special kind of stupid.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is...
Well, no, it's not the journalists. It's the pundits and the blogosphere.
Okay, I would lump them in with journalists because it's people, you have to have something to write about. I know that every night when I go to write my column, I'm pouring through the news. If I already didn't have an idea throughout the week, or I haven't seen, and this will be the next segment, junior ghetto street fights or something of that nature.
Okay.
What I usually will do is I'll pour through the news, I'll see what's going on, and I'll formulate what I'm going to write, my opinion on it based on what's out there. What are the facts?
Mm-hmm.
I think you have a lot of journalists, opinion writers, bloggers, pundits, what have you, who run out of things to write about, and then they just invent things. Like you were saying, anytime that he does something, that's away from where the president is, he's kissing up the conservatives.
Yeah,
I don't think that's true. That's somebody not having anything to write about.
Yeah, I mean, the idiotic thing about the Jerry Falwell comment is that while they were saying he was kissing up the conservatives by speaking at a college that Christians went to, he was also co-sponsoring an immigration bill with Ted Kennedy and just got back from a trip from Iraq with Russ Feingold. If he was kissing up the conservatives, he wouldn't hit the brakes on his cars if Ted Kennedy or Russ Feingold was crossing the street. or like this recent Kerry thing where everyone, after John Kerry said he botched a joke, that's stupid comment about the troops.
Mm-hmm.
Because McCain said he owes everyone an apology, it's like, oh, well, he sold out his friend. It's like, he didn't sell out his friend. His friend made a stupid comment that he wouldn't apologize for. He told him to apologize.
Right.
But it's gonna be entertaining. I mean, on the Chris Matthews show this morning, they chose the 8-for-08, and they had listed on the Republican side they had listed McCain, Giuliani, and Mitt Romney from Massachusetts. On the Democrat side, they had obviously Hillary, John Edwards, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Governor George Lopez from. Wait, not George. I can't believe I screwed that up.
Governor George Lopez?
No, it's not George Lopez. He looks like him. Bill Richardson. Governor Bill Richardson.
Do you think Bill Richardson looks like George Lopez?
A little bit.
Are you saying that because they're both Hispanic?
Not entirely.
Just checking. Okay, move on.
I mean, no. I mean, okay. If Bill Richardson was like an Anglo, no, I would not think he looked like George Lopez. Okay. But it just so happens that these two specific people of Hispanic descent, I think, happen to look alike.
All right, moving on.
But they, those were the 8 people that they were watching, which I can kind of agree with. I personally don't think Newt's gonna run.
You don't think so? What? See, that was my pick. I don't think Giuliani's going to make it out of Iowa, personally.
Okay.
I think that the primary is going to come down to Newt and McCain. And my personal favorite to win this thing, I got to say, much like the Democrats in 2004, I think a lot of people liked Dean but were resigned to accept Kerry.
Okay.
And taking my own advice, I will vote for Newt anyway in the Republican primary.
Okay.
But I still think McCain's going to beat him. But I want Newt to win. I really do. I want to see Newt make a real run for the presidency.
I don't think Newt's going to run, but I do think that personally, I don't think Giuliani is as much of a long shot as your conventional primary logic says. But I can see Newt as if either John McCain or Rudy Giuliani gets the nomination. I could see Newt as his running mate. Because it's basically, all right, you're the more moderate candidate. You run the general election. I'll keep the conservatives in line. I'll keep the base in line.
So you see a McCain-Newt ticket.
Yeah. Or Giuliani new ticket. Mitt Romney, I think he'll just do it for like, S's and G's.
Mm-hmm.
But and I mean, honestly, I think guys like Bill Frist and George Allen and Sam Brownback, the fact that they screwed up the past 6 years to a fairly well. If they run, either America is going to collectively roll their eyes, or B, they're going to get the Republican nomination, at which point, the Democrats can nominate a ham sandwich.
Right.
And
they're not going to nominate the ham sandwich. They're going to nominate one of two people. They're going to nominate Hillary Clinton, and she's going to pick either Barack Obama or Wesley Clark as her running mate.
Okay.
Or they're going to nominate Al Gore. And I don't know who he's going to pick for his running mate.
I mean, Gore still says he's not running.
You're right.
Yeah, we'll
so does Condoleezza Rice. But
I don't think Hillary is the heir apparent everyone thinks. I think she could raise a lot of money, but I think the expectations are too high. I mean,
what do you mean by that, John? I mean, obviously she's running. Does she have Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina at all in the bag? No, I don't agree with that either. But I mean, I'm not sure what you're saying.
It's the Kerry factor.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's been so focused on being the front runner for the past, in all honesty, the past 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only reason she didn't run in 2004 was because she said she was going to do at least one term as New York Senator, so she kept her word there. But I think she's been too over the place as far as taking issues with anything. That the same problem with Kerry, where no one actually knows where they stand. And the only reason Kerry did so well was because people weren't voting for him as much as they were voting against the president.
Right. Not Bush.
Yes. If the Republicans actually nominate someone who has actual leadership qualities, like John McCain or Rudy Giuliani, it's a different ballgame.
And that's the thing, is I don't know if she'll be. I mean, again, sometimes when you hear something in the press over and over and over again, I'm less likely to believe it.
Yeah.
And the thing you hear about Hillary incessantly is how polarizing it is. So she's polarizing. You either love her or you hate her. I mean, I'm sure the people that do. I personally can't stand the woman and the thought of her being president.
Mm-hmm.
But I know plenty of people out there that are just kind of meh. If she becomes the Democratic candidate, they'll vote for her because she's a Democrat, not because she's Hillary. I don't think the amount of people who are, exclusively and vehemently pro-Hillary or anti-Hillary are as big as the media wants us to believe.
Okay.
I don't think she's the rock star that people say she is.
I definitely don't think she is.
I don't think she can go to certain places in the country and be accepted. The problem with Hillary, and actually author of the Vast Right-Wing Conspiracies dossier on Hillary Clinton, Amanda Carpenter, wrote about this. And she was saying that all of her media gigs are entirely controlled environments. I mean, people made fun of the president for this, that he would go to these town hall meetings and, the audience was selected specifically to bump up the president. It was to give a positive media image, and everyone was like, oh, my God, we're living in Nazi Germany. Which, let me address that point for a second. Given the amount of retards out there who would have used it as a forum to talk about nothing and essentially drop their pants and throw it out on the guy in front of him, I'm not surprised they controlled the environment. And I don't think it was to make the president look smarter as it was to make sure they didn't have a room full of morons. But that's just my opinion. But it is the same thing here with Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
Is they really don't want, and I'll go as far as to say there are conservative Republican idiots there as well, who instead of asking her questions pertaining to whatever it is she's talking about that day, they're going to talk to her about, did you murder this guy? Did you attack this person? What did you do here? Whitewater, and then take down their pants and what have you. So, does she do well in the face of adversity to the point where you can throw her out in front of those kinds of people, a la Richard Nixon? No.
Mm-hmm.
But, should she have to? Until people start behaving better in public, I'm taking the politician's side on this one. They shouldn't have to be subjected to the lions of ridiculousness.
I agree.
Good. One of the things that happened this week in preparation for the show is John and I had been sending each other stories that we wanted to talk about on the radio show today. And before we let this subject go, I want to read something that John had sent me. This is from MSNBC.com. It's an interview with the now ousted Republican Party Chairman Ken Mellman, and he's saying that the GOP must reform before 2008, which is a duh, no kidding. It's funny saying deep-to-deep. It's funny what ends up making the news in the way it's said, because they write things in sort of an eye-grabbing, marketable fashion.
Case in point.
But it makes it sound so stupid that you're like, are the people in these boardrooms who write these things just that dumb? Go ahead, John.
Well, no, case in point was, everyone making a big deal about John McCain forming an exploratory committee. When, if you actually read all these big headlines, oh my God, he did this, where if you actually read the story, he basically filled out paperwork. So granted, at least when we spoke about it, we spoke about, what we thought the chances were. But all of these articles about John McCain and Rudy Giuliani was basically that, hey, they filled out paperwork. Here's the history of them up until filling out the paperwork. Tune in to see what happens next.
It's kind of like following me to the DMV for all the exciting things that I do.
Yes, exactly. Mark Radulich re-registered his scion.
I'm not going to read the whole thing because there's other stuff I want to get to, and I actually want to end on time because, as I found out last week, the show is an hour long, but the way Blog Talk Radio works is John and I can now talk for 6 hours if we want.
Sweet.
And we have in times past. However, you will only get the first hour of this live. If you want to listen to the rest of the show, you have to go back and listen to the podcast, which you can get off my website once I posted it, or go directly to blogtalkradio.com/progressiveconservatism.
Aha.
So at 1:30, I really want to stop because I want to be live here. I don't want to do the Rush Limbaugh fourth hour internet only thing. At least not today. I got stuff to do. So there's a question here from MSNBC.com. It says, you've said it would be a big mistake to think the party doesn't need to change after 2006. What does the party need to do? And Ken Mellman says, who's gay, by the way, according to Bill Maher. So ridiculous that he felt the need to out this guy.
And if anyone knows gay people, it'd be Bill Maher.
Ain't that the truth? Now I need a drum set. There you go. We have to recommit ourselves to being the party of reform. We have to push things like earmarks. We have to focus aggressively to reduce spending in Washington. That would be nice, considering that you're a conservative. He didn't say that, I did.
Okay.
Tax reform is another one. Immigration reform. Once again, duh. People put us into power for different reasons than Democrats. They put us in power to reform things. If all we're doing is managing the bureaucracy and not reforming it, we are not living up to the most important thing we stand for. Message 2 is we have to try as hard as we can to work in a bipartisan way where we can, consistent with our principles, and we have to make sure our tone is always a respectful tone. Washington is polarized. Americans have disagreements on issues. We certainly do. But Washington has personal disagreements on issues. Outside of the Beltway, people who are in different parties don't look at each other differently. Just because someone disagrees with you is no reason to call them names. And the third message is to say that people who are in public service ought to be about servicing the public, not aggrandizement for themselves, and certainly not for personal enrichment. Look, that last bit about personal enrichment, I think, goes across the board, and it may be in some cases more conservatives than Democrats. I don't have a stat to say who's stolen more from the American people. But in the last 6 years that I've been paying attention to politics, close attention, as far as personal attacks go, self-aggrandizement, and being just politically spiteful, I've seen that more from the Democrats than I have the Republicans. I'm not sure what the hell Ken Mellman's saying here.
No, I disagree with that.
Okay, how so?
Pretty much any Republican campaign commercial of the past 2 months alone.
Again, John, if you're talking about the election, yeah, things get ugly during elections. No, there's no reason for it. And the Republicans, I agree, are not innocent. I'm talking about all year long, no matter what the issue is. I'm going to go back to when Bush had his political capital after he'd won the election, and he says, I'm going to spend my political capital on fixing Social Security, and not a single Democrat proposed a plan against what he had proposed. All they did was obstruct. And they didn't obstruct on any rationale based on it's just fear. They were running on fear in that case. They were saying things like, the federal government's just going to try and take your money. I mean, it was like the oil thing. He's like, instead of President Bush just wants to get that oil, it's President Bush just wants to get your money.
Okay.
You have, in terms of the Iraq War between Kennedy and Murtha and Dick Durbin and all these other Democrats who never propose a single plan to deal with Iraq and instead just go everything from insulting the troops to painting these wildly fantastic pictures of how we've become Nazi Germany, and how Iraq is Poland.
Yeah, but that wasn't really Democrats as much as it was the blogosphere.
Well, no. Kennedy said what he said. Pelosi has said what she said. Murtha, Dick Durbin, all of these people have said. I think it was Dick Durbin who actually used the words in reference to our intelligence gathering in Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib, and though Abu Ghraib is sort of a touchy subject.
Mm-hmm.
That these were regimes of Stalin and Pol Pot. Mind you, Stalin killed a couple million of his own people, and Pol Pot too. I don't think we've killed a couple of million people at Gitmo, nor did we kill a couple of million people at Abu Ghraib.
Okay.
And this is what I mean. Those kinds of comparisons I think are kind of despicable. And it's more of what I've seen out of the Democrats than I've had of Republicans. And if you can find me a Republican that has said something that rose to that level, I'll back down off this argument.
Okay.
But I have yet to see it. I've yet to see. What I see is Democrats just attacking, and Republicans going, why can't we all just get along?
I haven't seen Republicans doing that at all. I mean, fine, Republicans might not be going as far as the Democrats with Nazi comparisons, but when you go so far as to, but the Republican message has basically been, if you disagree with me, you're a communist and un-American.
Mm.
The name calling goes back and forth, and granted, once you say the word Nazi, it doesn't matter what you say. You just hear the word Nazi, and people, especially politicians, should know better. But the Republicans are hardly innocent in this.
Okay, I'll give you that they're probably not. I hear it more from the Democrats than do the Republicans, and maybe this is something both of us should look out for. We'll do the weekly, he said, she said between the two parties, and we'll settle this once and for all.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I want to hit two stories from my blog this week because it's going to be because oddly enough, as disconnected as they are, it'll be a nice tie-in to my stuff on Iran.
Okay.
I wrote a piece. I think you're familiar with it, John, called "Junior Ghetto Parenting."
I love this piece.
Yes. And I'm not going to read what I wrote. You can see that at markradulich.com.
Plug.
Or progressiveconservatism.blogspot.com. It's the same website, depending on how you get there. In any case, somebody had posted on MySpace a video called Junior Ghetto Street Fights. And this was in my backyard of St. Petersburg, something I'm real proud of. Not.
Hard to represent.
Yeah. The 813, yo. In any case, it was under it was in the TampaBay10.com, and it was in the story goes like this. Disturbing video of kids fighting on MySpace. St. Petersburg, Florida. The video is hard to watch, and it's littered with profanity and racial slurs. As it should be. For nearly 2 minutes, adults, possibly even parents, definitely parents, cheer on two young boys to duke it out. It was posted on the popular website MySpace.com by a teen claiming to be from St. Petersburg. Just a quick amendment on that. It was up on MySpace, then it was down, and now it's back up again. If you go to my site, you click the link to the news article, you can watch, and I don't suggest you do, but if you really want to, just to see what we're talking about, you can watch these two kids fighting. Let me finish this, and I'll come back to that. Trina Bird Cox, president of the St. Petersburg chapter of the NAACP, calls the clip shocking and disturbing. Titled Junior Ghetto Street Fights, the clip has gotten more than 8,000 hits, probably more since then. It's listed as a comedy. A comedy. But Cox sees it as anything but laughable. That was pretty much I mean, there was a few more quotes in there from psychologists and whatnot, but basically you have these two kids, one named Peanut, not wearing a shirt, and he appears to be tattooed. And he's like 8 years old.
Getting better.
Yeah. You haven't seen this yet, John?
No, I've been busy watching the paint dry on my wall.
Okay, then. So Peanut and some other kid are just pounding each other and tackling each other, and they're fighting about as good as 8-year-olds tend to do. And that's not the most disturbing thing, because boys fight, kids fight, it happens. It's not to be encouraged, but I've gotten into many fights as a kid. It looked somewhat like this. Yeah. What was absent at the time was my father going, "Yo, kick his ass!"
Yeah, we never had that when we were growing up.
No, my father was not, "Yo, get him, Cracker! Yo, Cracker, get him, Honky! Cracker, Honky!"
I mean, we used to have a game we called Everyone versus Matt, where basically Matt was the big strong guy in class, and after school we'd have basically be everyone going up against Matt, and he'd destroy all of us. But like you said, you know, no one's parents were there saying, yo, kick him in the nuts, yo.
Mm-hmm. Throwing out, you know, the odd profanity.
Yeah.
So what's bad about this video, aside from the obvious, is not so much the kid fighting, it's the stupid parents and kids, you know, using the N-bomb like it's the only word that they know, literally. I mean, there are parts of this video where it's the N-word with nothing in between. It's like, I don't want to be called yo nigga by Public Enemy. It's that bad.
Okay.
Where they're just using it over and over and over again. And you know, encouraging them. And it wasn't like, you know, defend yourself, hey, put up your dukes or whatever. It's like, kill him. You know, it was like watching Mortal Kombat. You know, somebody yelling out, yo, finish him, N-bomb. You half expected him to either blow ice on him or pull out his spine. You know, it's just awful. And so you have this, and then in combination with this story, Largo, Florida, little girl flashes knife.
Which, again, we should point out is in your hood.
Yes, Largo is actually close to St. Petersburg. Little girl flashes knife as she tries to steal toys.
Son.
Largo police are looking for a little girl who pulled a knife on a Walmart clerk as she tried to steal 2 boxes of Lego toy blocks. It happened on Missouri Ave around 9 p.m. Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm. Police
say the 7 to 8-year-old girl hid the toys under her coat and tried to walk out the door. A store employee was watching and approached the child, asking her to turn over the Lego blocks. Police say the little girl then opened her jacket and displayed a combo carving knife with a forked point and a 10-inch blade, saying she was armed for protection. The employee talked to the girl into putting down the knife and the toys. The girl then rode away on her bike. The employee was not hurt.
I'm of two minds on this situation.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, if a 7-year-old anything pulls a knife on me, I'm going to boot them to the head.
Yes.
Because they're 7, and they're brandishing a weapon. It'd be a little different if it was a gun, because even though the kickback might blow their arm off, they could still shoot me ahead of time. But if they pull a knife on me, my initial instinct would be to boot them to the head. That's decision A. Decision B is to just let her leave with the Legos, because A, I'm just a Walmart employee, but B, I don't think I would actually want the publicity of the fact that I was accosted by a 7-year-old.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from. I don't want to spend too much time on this.
A, for ego, but B, for also, if I did boot her to the head, I'd get sued by her parents. Like, yo, man, why you boot my daughter in the head?
Oh, as I said to you the other day, a kid comes, a 7-year-old girl flashes a knife at me, or 7-year-old anything flashes a knife at me. I'm disarming the kid. I may not boot him to the face, you know, like Giant Kali from the Longest Yard, but I don't know what his real name is.
Giant Kali's close enough.
Yes. But no, that girl's going to lose the knife, and the parent is getting called. If I have to, I'll take a slash in the arm along the way. She has a gun, same thing. I'll take the bullet just to say that I was not going to get beaten. I was not going to get bullied by a 7-year-old girl. And the fact that, in this case, that appears to be what had happened, is this Walmart clerk got bullied by a 7-year-old girl tells me we're in no position to fight the Muslims. This is why the Muslims, I believe, think they're going to win this war.
This
and
is why they
probably
hate
are
us.
winning. We don't have the stomach or the spine to stand up to a 7-year-old girl. How exactly are we going to win this thing?
Mark, you sound just like Bill Maher.
Thanks. You know Ken Melman's gay, right? Which is, speaking of Muslims, I have a stack of crap here, all having to do with Iran and the Middle East. I'm going to read some of this to let you know what's going on in the world. I think the biggest thing about my blog is how much I've concentrated on this issue, and I want to make the radio show an extension of that. I don't want to lose that sort of thing. So, from IranMania.com, Iranmania, as opposed to WrestleMania. Iranmania, which is almost as good as WorldPoetry.com, but I'll get to that later. Dissent over Iran, military option on the table. As the Bush administration struggles to rally international pressure on the Islamic regime of Iran to halt its nuclear program, China and Russia are working to take the most powerful diplomatic weapon off the table, the military option. According to the Washington Post, Moscow and Beijing insist that a UN-sanctioned resolution under negotiation in New York should avoid language that could be used as a pretext for a military strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. They have received the tacit backing of the United States' key European partners, Britain, France, and Germany. John, before you go, because I know you can't stay with me the whole time, what do you think of this?
I'll be honest with you. I read all the Iran stories. I think it's the blood of the Iranian government puffing their chest up.
You do?
Yeah.
Well, specifically, what do you think about this idea of China and Russia taking the military option off the table? I mean, because at some point, without a mechanism in place, to issue a military response, and I'm not saying you have to, but there has to be if you do this, we will do this on the books to prevent this argument from happening where, this doesn't warrant that kind of a response. You know what I mean? They did this and it's horrible, but we should negotiate with them. No, we should bomb them into the Stone Age.
Well, I disagree taking the military option off the table, but has been the key downfall of the Iraq War, because since we screwed that up to a fairly well, we don't have the extra poker chips to go up against them. So if they say military options off the table, how are we supposed to argue that where we've already completely screwed up the last military operation?
And on that note, John, we'll see you next Sunday. We'll cover what we didn't get to cover this week and lots more.
Yes, I will be all read up on poetrynews.com.
Oh, good. WorldPoetry.com.
Oh, it's WorldPoetry.com.
Yes, and by then, we'll know whether or not the cat dog lady from Brazil actually had cat dogs or just cats.
Or maybe she had dog cats.
She could have had dog cats. All right, John. I'll see you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.
The Reverend John, folks. He's helping me out here. So anyway, getting back to the stuff on Iran, I'll read a little bit further here. Analysts say that the 15-nation Security Council's refusal to preserve the possibility, however remote, of a military action has weakened its hand as it confronts one of the most significant challenges of the 21st century, the possible emergence of a radical Middle East government with nuclear weapons. See, my issue with this is I really feel, as I said last week, that Iran is, in a sense, Nazi Germany, and they are on the march. They are trying to set up a caliphate across the world, and definitely in the United States. I have another article here. This one's from the Telegraph of telegraph.co.uk. Iran plotting to groom bin Laden's successor. Iran is trying to form an unholy alliance with al-Qaeda by grooming a new generation of leaders to take over from Osama bin Laden, the Daily Telegraph can reveal. Western intelligence officials say the Iranians are determined to take advantage of bin Laden's declining health to promote senior officials who are known to be friendly to Tehran. The revelation will deal a major blow to Tony Blair's hopes of establishing a new partnership with Tehran. Yeah, all you heard this week was was Tony Blair allegedly saying, well, we need dialogue with Syria, we need dialogue with Iran. What he was saying was, if they do the following things, that, of course, gets left out of the interviews, or it gets left out of whatever cuts they use. But essentially what he was saying was, we can be partners with Syria and Iran when they come forth and decide they're going to be serious. They're obviously not if they're plotting to groom the next bin Laden. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take for people in this country to realize we are at war with radical Islam, in the capital of radical Islam right now. Contrary to popular opinion, not Saudi Arabia, though they're not much of a help, it's Iran. Saudi Arabia, well, Saudi Arabia educates people to hate the United States, not because they're trying to extend the Muslim empire, they're just trying to stay in power. Iran is actively trying to set up the caliphate across the world. I don't know why people don't understand this, but when you've been following the story as I have for over a year now, I'm working on 2 years, you can see the pattern. And I'm going to get to that. The next story, I think, really spells it out here. UN report. Hezbollah training Somalia's Islamic forces. Hezbollah is providing advanced training to Somalia's, this is from Naharnet.com. That's Naharnet. UN report, Hezbollah training Somalia's Islamic forces. Hezbollah is providing advanced training to Somalia's Islamic forces in exchange for their military support to the Shia group during its summer war with Israel, according to a confidential UN report. The Washington Post said on Wednesday that the 86-page report was prepared by a panel of UN weapons and financial experts. The confidential report said Iran, Syria, Libya, and Hezbollah are providing arms, training, and financing to Islamic militants as they seize political and military control in the East African state of Somalia. To shore up support for their cause, Somalia's Islamic fighters provided military support in the summer to Hezbollah, sending 720 of its most experienced fighters to help battle Israeli forces, according to the report. The fighters were promised $2,000 in payments to their families for serving, and as much as $30,000 if they fell in battle. The report said that in exchange for their backing, Hezbollah provided advanced training to Somali fighters and sent 5 Hezbollah advisors to Somalia. It also allegedly solicited support for the movement from Iran and Syria. Folks, I don't know what more has to be said. Hezbollah is essentially the paramilitary wing of Iran. They're building an empire. Somalia is now a part of that. The flag of Iran is now sitting in Somalia, and it has been for a while, but I mean, this is proven. Now at least you don't have President Bush saying it, you have the UN, which everyone thinks is the end-all and be-all on these subjects. Yeah, I think Cal Thomas said it best. Cal Thomas is a guy I like to listen to on Fox on Saturdays at 6:30. He does the media review with a few other pundits. But he wrote in a column on townhall.com, which I think spells this out very well. And that is the biggest winners. This was actually on Tuesday, November 14th. The biggest winners in last week's election were the enemies of the United States, and who see the results as confirmation of one of their doctrines. The United States is weak and does not have the commitment to fight a protracted war. He's right. He is absolutely right about that. We don't really have the stomach to do this. And that's just exceptionally sad. Folks, we're running out of time here. I'm running out of battery power. There's a few more things I wanted to get to today, like the beheaded girls were Ramadan trophies, which was out of the Australia. But like I said, between time, money, and energy, that's going to be it for this week's show. I want to thank you for listening. You can hear us again next Sunday at 12:30, Progressive Conservatism on Blog Talk Radio.